It's the time for the package from China, so let's go. Hey, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are maybe going to take a close look at the best solution when it comes to the PlayStation 2 to HDMI. So we have reviewed all kinds of different solutions, but this RetroScaler is the newest version with a lot of new features. Having the option to use RGB but also the component signal in combination with 60x9 and 4x3, this thing can basically do it all, if we need to believe the box, and even have the option for 1080p, or at least like have 1080p output. But this is really the best, that is what we're going to be finding out. We're going to do comparisons with different dongles. Inside the package we're having a very nice manual. Bitfunks also has this with a multi-language manual with not the toilet paper stuff that we have seen before, but great overall explanation about everything. Inside we're having the cable slash dongle thingy, and this is actually the thing that we're getting. Yeah. Underneath we're finding an HDMI cable and a micro USB cable. So unfortunate, Mayflash had an USB-C, but they are still using micro USB. So when it comes to this particular cable or cable dongle thingy, I must say that when you're looking at this, it has quite some interesting options. So first of all, over here we're finding the HDMI out. So and this side there's nothing, because at the back we're finding the micro USB, and you need to put this thing in. You can use the front of USB port or having, let's say, an external USB source. So you just need to do that, otherwise it will not boot up. And over here at the top we're finding a tiny hole, and that's actually where the LED is underneath. But what are we getting when it comes to, let's say, options? So at the right side we're finding the aspect ratio. So what does it actually do? So when you're switching it from the right and to the left, then we're having the option to change out the aspect ratio, and that is something I think most of the dongles or other solutions don't really have that. So on the other side we're finding the RGB and the component switch, let's call it that. When you're switching this, we have the option to switch between, but take consideration is that not every single model will use the component cable. The system has been booted up in the RGBS mode. They called it with 4x3 aspect ratio. So when you're actually in the browser or a game, you can just switch fairly easy to different aspect ratio. So here we're going to be the 60x9, 4x3, and we can just switch in the game. So it's a very cool feature. So another thing is, and that's kind of funny but also kind of annoying, so if you're going to be to the component, if we're going to be switching it now, there is no signal whatsoever. And even if the signal comes back, it will be just a black screen, because he doesn't recognize the input of the component. So let's switch back to RGB. And then we need to go to the configuration, because that's actually what we need to do. So let's go to the settings over here. With the settings, we can switch to the component, and with the component we can go to the different signal coming out of it. You can see we can switch it to component video out. Now the screen is going to be green, so actually now it has been set to RGB on the dongle. You can also like say how you need to switch back the green to normal. But going to the component signal on the dongle now we will have like the clear image that we want to. And again, same story, we can switch between 60x9, 4x3. Another thing you need to take consideration that my capture card says that it is 1080p, the input signal is never going to be real 1080p. But nevertheless, we're having so many different solutions when it comes to these, let's say, plug and play devices. I've reviewed all kinds of them, but in this video I just also want to do a quick comparison with a couple of them to showcase what is the best one and how does it work. I will put this RetroScaler on the 4x3, yep, that's right, on 4x3, and we'll do the side-by-side comparison. But I think mostly what I want to do is focus on this thing at the first part of the video, so I show you the different kind of modes and how is the overall, let's say, display quality. But let's talk about the cable itself, or what kind of options and signal outputs we're having. But there are actually three different ways you connect your PlayStation 2. Over here having the AV out, this is the worst signal of all three of them. Then having the RGB. The RGB, take consideration, do offer, let's say, different qualities of RGB cables, but you can have a nice and minor difference between the overall quality and of course the component. And basically these are the three ways you can connect your cable. But when you're looking at, let's say, the RGBS signal, and both will be set to 4x3 ratio, and going to the component, I don't really notice any differences. And when you're looking at, let's say, the different two signals, I do have the feeling that he doesn't really utilize the component signal. Well, let's start off with the AV out signal. This is maybe the worst signal you can actually get from your PlayStation 2, but yep, it can get more like horrible, simply because with the PlayStation 2 or 1 dongle thingy, it's absolutely horrible, like the worst signal ever. Moving on to the RGB cable, and from this point on it's going to be interesting. So we're going to use the RGB signal coming out of PlayStation with the new RetroScaler. And the first thing you notice that it is quite dark, so it's basically like somebody turning off the contrast. But when you're looking into the component version, there is no huge improvement when it comes to the darkness of the image, but also when it comes to the sharpness, you do see some minor differences over here, but for this point I need to zoom in to Wolverine. When zooming in on this character, you can actually see with the RGB signal and going to the component that the component looks more smooth. The character itself is an overall better, let's say, way how it looks, but that's the only minor difference that actually can be found between the signal inputs and outputs. Let's go further with, let's say, the comparison. And the next thing I wanted to check out is the component cable itself with the simple converter. And here you can see that the yellow of Wolverine looks so much better. So the component with the chip upscaler or converter at least is such a big improvement and gives more true colors. Okay, next up, PlayStation 2 to HDMI, this very cheap first generation. The dongle, it's absolutely great, like it comes very close to the original component signal out. Yeah, then we're having the version number 2, and like I mentioned before, it's like a difference in the brightness, but also the contrast, like the colors are slightly darker from Wolverine and the May Flash. The dongle itself was higher quality, but I didn't really notice big difference or improvements when it comes to the signal output. To a certain level, this is maybe one of the best ones out there when it comes to, let's say, functionality. You don't need to mess around with what kind of model do I have that will it support. Actually, the HDMI solution, this thing supports everything. It will be upscaled, so this is like a cheap upscaler. You can compare with that to the 1080p. So when you're having the component, the best signal output from the PlayStation will be 480p, so it's having an upscaling. Yeah, is it something you need to be happy with? I don't know, to be honest. For the overall quality when it comes to the build, I've had this situation that it gets quite hot, but not to the point that it will break down fairly easy. Yeah, let me know in the comments, do you ever like bought one of these dongles? What is your overall experience? Do you like this thing over, like, say, the other cheap solutions? Thank you all for watching. Consider subscribing, hit the little bell, and it would be great to see you in the next video.